Good evening. I'd like to call this regular business meeting to order and ask the treasurer to call the roll.
President Baker.
Present.
Mr. Brown. Vice President Cole.
Present.
Ms. Gibbs.
Here.
Ms. Hudson.
Here.
Mr. Peretti.
Here.
Ms. Reyes.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. I would now like to call on an 11th grade student here, Marion-Franklin Brianna Schumach, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please come up to the stage, Ms. Schumach. Hi. Thank you.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, and I want to thank Marion-Franklin High School and specifically Principal Costello for having us here tonight, being very gracious hosts for us as we have our meeting here prior to tonight's community dialogue, which will commence immediately following our meeting. And we all want to take part in those conversations, so we will do our very best to conclude this meeting prior to 6 o'clock this evening. So just very quickly, I'll read through the agenda that we have before us. After we adopt our agenda, we'll have a special recognition which will be led by Vice President Cole. After that, we will recess briefly into executive session. We will return to take public comment from two speakers that we have. We will then hear from our superintendent, treasurer, and internal auditor, any information that they have to share. We will then take up our consent agenda, after which we will take any announcements from board members and we will adjourn. And it is my hope that that will all conclude prior to 6 o'clock. So having said that, the chairman will now entertain a motion that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
President Baker.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Vice President Cole.
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs.
Yes.
Ms. Hudson.
Yes.
Mr. Peretti.
Yes.
Ms. Reyes.
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you very much, Mr. Treasurer. At this time, I'd like to call on Vice President Cole to lead us in a recognition.
Thank you, President Baker. It's our honor and esteem to acknowledge someone in our community who has contributed so much to the enrichment and enhancement of not only its residents, but its most special residents, in that of our young people. The gentleman that we're going to acknowledge today by proclamation of honor is Dr. Thomas E. Simpson. Can I ask them to come up? As they approach, I will read our proclamation. Whereas Dr. Thomas E. Simpson, or Doc as he is affectionately called, spent 35 years with Columbus City Schools. And whereas Doc coached basketball, baseball, and track and was a science teacher, a probation hearing officer, as well as a vice principal and principal. And whereas Doc touched the lives of thousands of students, helping them navigate life's challenges. And whereas Doc helped many students attend and complete their high school and college education, many who are educators, leaders, and elders in our community today. Now therefore be it resolved that on April 19, 2016, the Columbus City Schools Board of Education recognizes and honors Dr. Thomas E. Simpson for extraordinary personal commitment and outstanding leadership and dedication to scholarship and service. We again just are thankful that Dr. Thompson made this contribution to our community and the legacy of this district and to our young people. Please give him a hand. I guess there's nowhere to take a picture.
Dr. Simpson, thank you very much. Appreciate it, sir.
Does he have a few words or no?
Dr. Simpson, if...
When he gets to the podium.
Go to the podium. Go to the podium and say a few words.
If you like.
I was just asking Dr. Simpson...
Dr. Simpson, you can take one of these. Yes.
I was just asking Dr. Simpson to offer a few words.
I'd like to say good evening. It's a pleasure to be here again. When I was a coach, we used to have some good times here when it was really tough. And I want to thank you all for coming out today. And my friend here, my chauffeur, one of my ball players at Mohawk, and my dear friends, one of my students, Mickey Glenn, and Mrs. Cruz. And we are very fortunate to have a superintendent. He's nattily attired there. And he's such a friendly person. And I want to say, Brother Coles and all of the board members, you're doing a fine job. And I've been blessed, and I give all praise and thanks to God that has enabled me to do what I did and kept me healthy from a family of 5 boys. Had a great upcoming. Wasn't rich, but I was a long way from being poor. Right. And gave a lot back to the kids. And I only got where I am because of the kids. It wasn't about the money. It was about trying to build something for the kids for the future. And I've got them down as city council, and I got doctors, I got lawyers, and I got a call from Hawaii. I got a call from Alaska. They are everywhere. Had a few to spend some time in trouble, but got home and doing well. And I want to say, give all praise to God, and thank you, all the board members. Have a good day.
Yeah, let's.
Come out there with him.
I know I am.
We'll come up with him.
Leave the board, you know?
105 boys, huh? So
Squeeze right on in there.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Very good.
Dr. Good.
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Vice President.
If I can also note, Doc Simpson is also receiving an acknowledgement from a former Hawaii resident, in that of our President, Barack Obama. He's being acknowledged for his contribution to this community as well by the President.
Thank you, Vice President Cole, for bringing that before us, and thank you and congratulations to Dr. Simpson. And at this time, I would like to ask the Vice President to offer a motion.
Yes, this is our motion. It is a recommendation that the board recess into executive session per section 121.22 G1 Ohio Revised Code to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Mrs. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
And President Baker?
Yes.
That motion carried.
The board will now recess into executive session. We will return to the stage just as soon as possible. We appreciate your patience. All right. The chair will now entertain a motion that we adjourn from executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you very much, Mr. Treasurer. We will now proceed with public comment. We do have 2 speakers this evening. Each one of you have 4 minutes to speak. When I call your name, please approach the podium. Speaker number 1 is Stanley Watkins. Topic is Board Not to Authorize 9.3. Action requested, Board Not to Authorize the Resolution 9.3. Good evening, Mr. Watkins. You have 4 minutes.
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bahoric, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Good. My name is Stanley Watkins. I'm a special education teacher and the subject of Resolution 9.3. I have supplied the Employee Relations Board with copies of my doctor's tests related to my diagnosis of sleep apnea. The resolution states in part that the reason for the termination is the sleeping in class. Here I've provided the doctor's test, and I've also provided copies of that to the board. And basically, if the board does not proceed, it would be a reasonable accommodation that I would be asking for, and I would believe that this particular instance, and I would know that I only had 1 warning, is something that requires an accommodation rather than a termination. It's not warranted since now I have the CPAP machine. I should never have this problem again as long as I use the CPAP machine, which is to eliminate the stoppage of breathing while I sleep. So again, I'm moving that the board either vote no on the resolution 9.3 or move it to June, and in the meantime have the hearing officer to review the evidence that's presented in the medical evidence. Furthermore, the second thing I'd like to talk about is, in my opinion, I feel that I'm only being terminated because I advocated for my students. That's what a teacher is supposed to do. My kindergarten multiple disability classroom was placed on the 2nd floor. The principal refused to move the classroom. We had 2 near-miss falls while trying to take children down one whose IEP specifically said he could not walk steps. But again, I think I advocated for my classroom. I advocated to keep the district in compliance with what should have been done. I also reported this noncompliance to the ODE. And again, it is my opinion that I'm only being terminated because I did what every teacher is indeed expected to do. So again, in recap, I'm asking that the board have the hearing officers look at the information, the medical information that I've provided you, and in the alternative, just vote no on the resolution. And thank you for giving me your time.
Thank you for addressing us this evening, Mr. Watkins. Our next speaker is Alice Rathburn. Topic is endorse addition of social workers. Action requested for the board. Vote in favor of 15 additional social workers. Ms. Rathburn, good evening.
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bahoric, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Good. As indicated, my name is Alice Rathburn. I am here representing the 43 interfaith congregations of the Bread Organization to urge you to approve the portion of the personnel budget proposed by Dr. Good for 15 additional social workers and 10 additional guidance counselors. In the December 20, 2015 dispatch, it was reported that 6,000 students were suspended due to truancy in the state of Ohio during the 2012-13 school year. In 2009, Bread leaders challenged Columbus City Schools to end the practice of out-of-school suspensions for truancy. That year, there had been over 4,000 out-of-school suspensions for truancy in Columbus City Schools alone. We applaud Dr. Good and the board for officially ending that practice in Columbus City Schools and serving as a model for the rest of the state. But attendance continues to be a problem in the schools. Project Key was a collaborative effort to proactively address the barriers that leave many students at risk for chronic truancy. This effort was led by Bread and County Prosecutor Ron O'Brien and included representatives from the courts, Columbus City School District, Franklin County Children's Services, the YWCA, law enforcement, and others. Project Key funded advocates in, over the years, 10 schools, providing early intervention strategies for students demonstrating attendance problems. Project Key was discontinued last year with the understanding that increasing the number of social workers would have a greater impact on truancy intervention district-wide. Unfortunately, the budget for additional social workers was not approved for the 2015-16 school year. We understand that Dr. Good has again submitted a budget for 15 additional social workers, making a total of 38.5 FTE social workers. If the board does not approve Dr. Good's request for additional social workers, the district will lose ground on nearly 10 years of dedication to early intervention practices, and a growing number of students will probably become truant. Please do not allow this to happen. Again, we urge the board to approve the portion of the personnel budget proposed by Dr. Good for 15 additional social workers and 10 additional guidance counselors. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rathburn. Thank you very much. And unless there are clarifying questions from board members, we will move on to hear a report from our treasurer. Mr. Treasurer, have you a report to share this evening?
I do, President Baker. It's coming up momentarily. President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board, this evening I'm here to present what will hopefully be a brief overview of the highlights of the March financial report. Included at board docs on the web is the complete presentation of some 33 slides that will certainly include a lot more detail than I go through this evening. I've winnowed this down a bit so that we can get through this, and I'll hit the highlights. For the year to date for the month ending March, we're showing about $690 million in revenues and $606 million in expenditures. As always, we look at variances to our plan for the year, and in terms of overall revenue, we're over by 8.7 year to date, or 1.3% above plan. And on the expenditure side, we're under about 9.4 million, or 1.5% under plan. Quickly looking at a breakdown of the variances in revenue, general property taxes have returned to being very close to plan with the receipt of first half settlement in March. So now we're running just slightly under plan at about 0.4% under plan. For state revenue, which represents a fairly large portion of the variance, the fiscal year 16 plan was based on the May 2015 5-year forecast, and subsequent to that, in October, when we prepared the October 5-year forecast, we increased that amount by approximately $6.6 million over what we had in the plan. And that was primarily as a result of the adoption of the state budget. Using those revised estimates, that would reduce this year-to-date variance to about 4.4 million and 1.94% over plan. Other revenues, positive variance is attributable to certain payments in lieu of taxes that we received throughout the year. We don't really know specifically the timing of those, and I expect that we'll finish the year on this line item at about 1.8 million over plan. Transfers and advances in the non-operating revenue areas are based upon cash flow needs of other funds, and quite frankly, they're simply running under plan. Again, it's just based upon need in any particular given year. We generally budget a like amount in revenues and expenditures for the year, making them cash flow neutral, and we'll see how that works out for the balance of this year. Just a quick picture of one of our major revenue sources, general property tax, and you can see we'll be right on plan. Graphically, this is our state revenue year to date and our projection that will be at about $302 million versus $293 in plan. Again, against the forecast, which we had increased, will be about $4.2 million above the October forecast, October 15 forecast, or within about 1%. Moving on to the variances and expenditures, and take a closer look at the $9.4 million variance. Personnel for the month year to date, this represents the third month that we've been running about $5 million under plan. We expect to finish the year pretty much at that level. Charter school deductions continue to run above plan. Again, we've previously noted that much of this variance will subside during the balance of the fiscal year because the plan was based upon some different types of behavior in 15. We expect to be about $1.7 million over plan by the end of the year. Under other non-personnel line items continue to run under plan as they have pretty much for the balance of for the year to date. We are, after discussions at Finance Committee, doing a deeper dive into some of these lines to evaluate whether or not those variances will continue, which I've assumed in my forecast for the end of the year, my projection for the end of the year. I assume they have, but we'll be looking for major outstanding purchase orders that might be converted into cash expenditures prior to the end of the year, and we'll report back on the Finance Committee at our next meeting. And just to remind you that the appropriation still exists on those lines, so they can't expend it or encumber it, and that'll have an impact on where we end the year in cash. Non-operating expenditures account for about 2/3 of this total variance. These cash flow items, like their counterparts on the revenue side, are a function of cash flow needs of other funds. And with the non-operating revenue side running about $2.7 million under plan, and these running, combined with how these are running under plan, we expect the impact on cash to be a plus $3.7 million. Just a picture of the charter school deductions to show you how our plan expects larger deductions towards the balance of the year, and we don't believe that will happen. They should remain flat, and therefore the variances year to date will drop down to about 1.7. Another way we look at this is look at the state data that we get on the school foundation payment reports, and through the March 2nd report, you can see that that's indicating about almost $165 million in deductions versus a plan of about $163 million. In this particular case, the math works out to be about $1.6 million over plan. And as I've said before, we'll cover any needs for appropriation within the existing appropriation resolution. We don't anticipate any need to increase our general fund appropriation for this expenditure. One of the things I do at this time of the year, and there are many slides regarding this in the full presentation, is to look at projecting our balances out to the end of this fiscal year and compare them to the plan. So we've looked month to month where we are year to date. Now the question is, where do I anticipate we'll finish the year? Briefly jumping to some of the total lines. For total revenues, I'm looking forward to anticipating about 2.29 in total revenues over plan, or within 0.29% of our overall revenue estimations at the beginning of the year. On the expenditure side, total operating expenditures will come in, or total expenditures overall will come in about $26 million under plan, or about 3.3 under plan. So coming over revenue a couple of million and under on the expenditures by about $26 million means that versus the plan, the cash balance will be about $28.5 million higher than what we had anticipated. Just to put that in perspective, we should carry about a 30-day ending cash balance, which is close to $68 million. So this is not even a half a month's worth of cash flow, all right? I also do a projection to the end of the year and compare it against the 5-year forecast back in October, because it is that October forecast that we begin with as we started our budgeting process back in January. And simply jumping to the bottom line here, because there was a slight difference of close to $2 million difference between what we had in the plan and what we had in the forecast, you can see that against the plan we'll end up about $30 million more than against the 5-year forecast. All of this is rolling forward into our update and into our budget planning. We have a second Finance Committee meeting scheduled for next Tuesday for further review of what everyone here has prepared in terms of a fiscal year 17 through 21 plan, and also preparing not only for the appropriation resolution to be adopted in June, but the May update to the forecast that will be adopted yet in May. So very quickly, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. That was quick. Are there any questions? Chair Hudson, would you like to offer anything?
Thank you, President Baker. Just invite all any interested board members in the community to attend the meeting on Tuesday, and we should have some good material ready to bring forward to the board at our next meeting.
Excellent. Thank you. Seeing no other questions, the board will now entertain, the board chair will now entertain a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Are there questions on any pieces of legislation within the consent agenda? Hearing none. Mr. Treasurer, please call the roll.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes, but I abstained from 11.2 and 11.4.
Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes, but I abstain on 11.1, page HR A-21.
That motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Now, due to the lateness of the hour, I'd like to dispense with any board member announcements or comments unless there's an objection to that. All right. Immediately following the adjournment of this meeting, we will begin the Facility Master Plan Community Meeting, which will start right here in this room with the co-chairs, Ms. Gibbs and Mr. Peretti. So having said that, the chair will now entertain a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Motion carried.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.